Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this webinar on giving you more information on this call for tender for Green Assist. My name is Mark van der Hagen. I am the head of unit in CINEA, in the unit responsible for program support, coordination and communication. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to this seminar. Next slide, please. So this relates to a call for tender for a multiple mixed framework contract for the implementation of Green Assist. And Green Assist stands for Green Advisory Service for Sustainable Investment Support. Next slide, please. What's the agenda of today? So after my introduction, we will have the colleagues from DG Environment presenting you the policy context for this Green Assist initiative. And as Green Assist is an InvestEU advisory initiative, the colleagues from DG ECFIN will also present the InvestEU framework so that you have a very good idea of the context in which this new Green Assist initiative is developed. Then at 10 o'clock, the colleagues from CINEA will present to you, starting overall the framework contract and the overall tendering approach. We will end then this first session, 2 parts, with a question and answer session. And this you can do via Slido. I will give you afterwards more information on that. At 10:30, then we will go into the details and present to you first the tender specifications in relation to Lot 1. Afterwards, you will be able to ask questions via Slido again, and we will try to answer them as much as possible. And at 11:30, we will start with giving you the detailed presentation on Lot in relation to the tender specifications for Lot 2, followed also by question and answers session, again via Slido. Next slide, please. So before going into the substance, I would like to give you a few general orientations about the webinar of today. First of all the presentations that you see and also the question and answer sessions will be recorded, and these recordings will remain accessible on the website. You see the link to the website already now, but obviously this information is not yet there. We will upload it shortly after this webinar. Next point. You may ask questions in Slido, as I already indicated. Your questions will be anonymized, and the link through which you can connect to Slido is indicated on the slide. It's https://www.sli.do. The access code that you need to enter in order to come into our session is #GreenAssist in one word. Next point. The material that we present here and the replies to the questions provided in this session are only indicative. However, all the questions and the replies will also be formulated in writing and will be made accessible to you. Of course, your first reference is the documents, the tendering documents that are available in the portal, and these documents shall always prevail over any other information that you may receive. If there is a correction to be made, this will be done through corrigenda, and then this, of course, corrigendum prevails over the initial documents that are being published. Next point. Now, you may not contact any staff from the Commission or from CINEA in relation to this tender directly. If you try to contact us, we will definitely not give you replies in relation to this call for tender. All questions on substance that are raised during this webinar will also be answered in writing and will be accessible through the TED e-tendering portal. Next slide. So now going into the first point of the agenda, presentation of CINEA, the policy context and InvestEU. So next slide. Yes, so first a word about CINEA. So CINEA is an implementing agency of the European Commission. And we have been entrusted with by the Commission, in particular by the colleagues of DG Environment, to implement the Green Assist. So CINEA is really an implementing organization who turns the policies which are defined by the Commission into action. So the Commission defines the strategies, the objectives, the priorities, and also the work programs in relation to the programs that we implement. They also make the main decisions in relation to the implementation of these programs, and the evaluation of the actions in the programs are also done by the European Commission. Then the CINEA, as an implementing agency, organizes the calls for proposals or calls for tender, and selects then the projects of the winning tenderers. We then manage and implement the projects, and we also monitor their technical and financial implementation, ensuring sound financial management. Next slide. Then a word about the main mandate, because there are different executive agencies that have been created by the Commission. They all have a thematic focus, and the focus of CINEA is the Green Deal. So we are the focal point for green and infrastructure projects. And we have already a long track record in relation to promotion of funding possibilities, engaging with beneficiaries and stakeholders, and also raising the visibility of our programs and their results. Next slide. So in a nutshell, we have a total budget of 56 billion for the period 21 to 27. We will have a staff which will be over 500 colleagues by 27. And for the moment, we manage a little bit more than 2,800 projects. And this we expect to increase to over 4,500 projects in 2027. Apart from managing these programs and these projects, we also provide policy feedback to the European Commission. We also have expertise in relation to all the topics that we manage, which we provide to the service of our beneficiaries when we manage, in fact, the complete life cycle of the project from the very start until the closure of the projects. And then we also exploit the synergies between the various programs and in putting, I would say, the common elements of these programs together, and also seeing where they can reinforce one another. So which are the programs managed by CINEA? It is the European Maritime and Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund, the LIFE program, the Innovation Fund, the Horizon Europe program in relation to Cluster 5, which is linked to climate, energy and mobility. We also manage the Connecting Europe facility, providing and for the strands that relate to transport and energy. The transport related to telecom is managed by another agency. We also have the new program, which is called the Renewable Energy Financing Mechanisms. And we also manage the public sector loan facility pillar of the Just Transition Mechanism. Next slide, please. And so this gives you an overview of the of what is CINEA. And before I would say passing the floor to the colleagues from DG Environment who will present the LIFE program from which the Green Assist emerges, I just would like to say that we are extremely excited about this this initiative. Also, we look very much forward to receiving lots of interest from you. We think that it is an exciting opportunity both for us, but also for the winning tenderer. And then, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Sabine Soubry for the presentation on the activities of DG Environment and the LIFE program.
Many thanks, Mark, and good morning on my side to all participants. Be very welcome. On the side of DG Environment, we are also very excited by launching this Green Assist today. And I would like maybe to give you a few words on the raison d'être, if I may say, of this initiative. Why did DG Environment decided to push for this at an early stage of the programmation? I think it is important to say a few words on this. And my colleague Christina afterwards will give more details on the investment on InvestEU tool and mechanic, if I may say. First, maybe for those who I don't know, my name is Sabine Bourdi. I'm the head of unit in DG Environment for Green Finance and Investment Unit. So we are trying in this unit to coordinate all sustainable finance activities and the greening of EU investment. So we have two main objectives. First, to get more funding for environmental priorities in terms of developing growth, jobs, compliance with the EU legislation. But also we are trying to green all traditional investment and those investments that are not so green today and to mitigate their effect on the environment. Having said this, maybe more on the why of this green assist, and if you could project the next slide, please. I would like to insist on the fact that we have seen in the past programming period that despite all the effort to try to reduce the risk, there's still a great distance between the stated objective to spend more on investment and to dedicate more on environment, and the reality on the ground. And to deliver today more than ever, we need to deliver this green and digital transition. We needed to work upstream and to ensure that all the necessary tools and expertise are in place for the preparation of innovative and sustainable projects on the ground. And this is particularly key for us to ensure the implementation of the biodiversity strategy and the circular economy action plans two key pieces of the European Green Deal commitment of the current Commission. So more specifically, the European Green Deal investment plan has referred to the need for more advisory as regards natural capital, and the next generation EUs that come afterwards echoes also the need for the creation of a dedicated initiative under InvestEU to mobilize 10 billion over the 10 next year, and the first 3 billion should be foreseen in the period 2021 that is already over, up to 2024. So we really need to push for the deployment of this ambition of 10 billion for natural capital and circular economy initiative. And as you all know, the implementation of environmental projects faces major barriers such as limited administrative capacity for some of our member states. It can be also both at national and local level, the lack of awareness and sustainability expertise, both in public and private promoters, and of course, the bankability of projects. And this is why guarantees are so important to deploy investment in these areas. And based on this, I would say, lesson learned also from the past, we decided in DG Environment to mobilize a share of life program to develop this dedicated technical assistant to support really at an early stage of the programming period, a pipeline of innovative but also sustainable project that would also be mature enough to be implemented at full during the current MFF. Of course, what is important is to work closely with all the member state stakeholders and to ensure that projects that have not seen the opportunity to be implemented in the past programming period can be this time with more innovation, with more expertise in terms of environmental implementation. So we really want this expertise to overcome all the bottlenecks that we have experienced so far, be it from the natural capital financing facility, be it from cohesion policy, or even from the previous FC, so-called Juncker plan. This is really important to see how we can make better and provide all the necessary support to promoters, project promoters, potential beneficiary at a very, very early stage. So this earmarked allocation should be primarily supporting natural capital and circular economy. It is, I would say, hosted under InvestEU Advisory Hub. This is, of course, the central technical assistance hub for the Commission for project support. And for us, as you see on the slide, the funding will go in the advisory hub to then deploy guarantee under the first pillar of InvestEU. But this will be explained more in detail by Christina later on. Of course, the three pillars are all in all, I would say, not dedicated fully to environmental investment, of course. There is only under the InvestEU Guarantee Fund, the first pillar, there is 4 windows, and under one of this window, we have an earmarking of 60% for environmental and climate investment. So this window being nearly doted by 10 billion of guarantee. So it's quite a lot of guarantee to deploy then investment on the ground. the total investment which is foreseen under InvestEU guarantee is 372 billion. So we want to, of course, take the most out of it for environment, but beyond also, as I mentioned earlier, to green other type of project. Next slide, please. The greening of other project is important also because we have in the current MFF the need to ensure that project that will be implemented will not significantly harm the environment. So this is really important to take the most of the technical assistance available to ensure that this will be the case. So how did we use this 50 million of LIFE program to build this dedicated technical assistance? First, and ensure the deployment of this 10 billion natural capital and circular economy initiative. So we split it, the envelope, in two parts. First, 20 billion will go into the sustainable infrastructure window assistance, mainly driven by EIB, and 30 million will go into green assist, being driven by CINEA, as mentioned by Mark earlier, and really dedicated to support green structure finance services with a dedicated roster of experts. The need to, as I mentioned, develop more assistance for the greening of traditional investments, deep green investments, and also one side of the activity will be supporting the development of training, capacity building, market development, and close to market project. This, of course, in close, I would say, coordination and intelligence with what is being deployed by DG Reform and the technical support instrument. So here again, the Green Assist support being hosted by the advisory hub of the InvestEU will first, of course, support the deployment of InvestEU investment, but can be also supporting other investment under other EU program or national budgets. Next slide, please. What is important for us is that this is really a top-up, in the sense that this is really a technical assistance that cannot be provided by other tools. So this is why we dedicated this amount from LIFE. And we want this technical assistance to be targeted really on environmental sector with a specific attention to those investments that I mentioned earlier have not worked so far because of the reason that I mentioned. And the targeted areas should be the nature and ecosystem-based solutions to contribute to environmental improvement, enhance biodiversity, ecosystem resilience, as well as climate change adaptation. The investment also in the waste sector that will contribute really to scale up the transition toward a circular economy and sustainable economy. Investment and activities including business and digital solution contributing to the protection and conservation of terrestrial, freshwater, marine ecosystem, and all the services that they provide, including soil, biodiversity, water cycle, and conservation and regeneration of resources. Investment in the water sector also, which aim at implementing the water legislation and the Zero Pollution Action Plan, green and blue infrastructure as well. And all this include investment and activities, including businesses and digital solutions that are identified in national program required under the EU environmental legislation, or serving, of course, the objective of this program. So it's really important to give particular attention to the project developed under InvestEU thematic project that will be described later on, and where investment risk need to be addressed more than for other projects. So those, of course, link to the bankability or the innovative character of the project. The second objective, as mentioned on the slide, is really to focus on the greening of more, I would say, traditional investments. So the top-up will also provide assistance with a view to significantly improve the environmental performance of projects in other sectors that are eligible under InvestEU, particularly energy, transport, bioeconomy, blue economy, and broadband. So these include investment that upgrade or replace traditional infrastructure, or also corporate investment combining natural capital and circular solutions, such as ecosystem-based adaptation to flood, for instance, ecosystem-based project to agriculture, forestry, or fishery. The main goal, all in all, is really to ensure that such a top-up is boosting circular economy, natural capital considerations, and will also mainstream these activities in, I would say, more traditional type of investment. So this will be financed 100% by the top-up, and the investment under the second objective that you see on the slide will be financed 50% by the top-up, and the remaining 50% should come from the InvestEU Sustainable Infrastructure Advisory Budget. Next slide, please. So in terms of expectation for Green Assist more specifically, it is of course very important that it complements the Sustainable Infrastructure Advisory Service to support both greening of traditional investment and the preparation of environmental investment. So by providing EIB Group, but also all other advisory partners, a roster of environmental experts and related services that will be managed by CINEA. Of course, we also rely on Green Assist for some studies and capacity building on an ad hoc and demand-driven also basis. The expert roster, which is the first lot, will support green structured finance services on a cross-sectoral basis for the 4 investment windows, which are research, innovation, SMEs, sustainable infrastructure, and social investment and skill window. So it will act as a complementary and cross-cutting advisory service to what is being already foreseen. The second envelope comprises a more innovative approach responding to the need to build and support proactive structured green finance team that boost the supply of qualitative green investment proposal from the ground up. And to do so, the roster of experts will be established and operate for the purpose of strengthening investment teams of project promoters. So whenever a promoter needs a dedicated assistant expertise that he has not used so far, or he has not foreseen to develop, Green Assist is here and to support and provide this dedicated expertise. So both again in greening traditional investment and developing deep green investment. So this should be in place as from September, and very important that it is taking off as soon as possible, as programming period has already started under the current MFF, and project promoters need help as soon as possible. I would like now to pass the floor to my colleague Christina, so that she gives more information also on how InvestEU will be working jointly with Green Assist to deploy this dedicated assistance. Thank you very much for your attention. Looking forward, and over to you, Christina.
Thank you, Sabine. Good morning, everybody. So maybe in the next 10 minutes, I would like to present to you the InvestEU framework which is the framework under which, let's say, our cooperation with the CINEA agency for the implementation of the Green Assist Advisory Initiative will be taking place. So please turn to the next slide. The InvestEU program, as Sabine already mentioned, is one of the new MFF programs, the new EU budget framework for the next 7 years, starting from 2021 until 2027. And this program is specifically aiming to support private investments and to generate additional investments through the help of EU budgetary guarantee. So this is not a grant program. We are not paying grants. But our main objective is to support private investments in the key policy priority areas of the EU policies. And for the InvestEU program, there are 4 large policy windows around which these policy priorities are concentrated. In particular, the sustainable infrastructure window, the research and innovation and digitalization window, small and medium-sized companies window, and the social investments and skills window. So under these 4 policy windows, the InvestEU program is aiming to support with the help of EU budgetary guarantee, which is implemented in partnership between the European Commission and our implementing partners, which are in principle financial institutions, the main one being the EIB group, European Investment Bank and the European Investment Fund. But also, for the first time under the InvestEU program, we are also opening up this cooperation to other financial institutions such as European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Council of Europe Bank, and also a large number of national promotional banks, which will be able to apply for the EU budget guarantee to support private investments and lend to project beneficiaries which are proposing projects falling under one of these 4 policy windows. So the InvestEU fund is the first pillar of the InvestEU program, as also already explained by Sabine in the previous presentation. The second largest pillar is the InvestEU Advisory Hub, and this pillar is very important, in fact, to make the whole program operational and functioning, and to support the investments which are supported by the InvestEU fund, but not only limited to the projects which are applying for support under the InvestEU fund. Therefore, the InvestEU Advisory Hub, as the main and the central EU-funded technical assistance and advisory support hub, it can also support advisory requests and technical assistance requests for other sources of funding, not only the InvestEU program. And finally, the third pillar of the InvestEU program is the InvestEU portal, which is in fact a continuation of our well-started initiative under the previous program, the European Fund for Structural Investments, and that is in fact an online matchmaking database which allows project developers and investors to meet and to find each other in a way for the projects to find investors and for the investors to spot projects which could be looking for financing. Next slide, please. And InvestEU program, of course, is also, as the rest of the EU budget under this budget planning period 2021-2027, is very closely aligned with the European Green Deal objectives, and this is how we are planning to support the Green Deal investments. The investment needs in Europe within the next decade to implement our key objectives, such as the climate transition, decarbonization of the European economy, including in particular the transport and energy sector, additional investment in the environment sector, in the biodiversity, all of these require massive investments by 2030 and the 2050, when the EU has committed to reach the climate neutrality. That's why most of these investments, of course, will need to be private. And this program, the InvestEU program, is very much aiming to support such private investments, to orient them in the sectors which are important for the European Green Deal objectives. How we are planning to do it? I mean, most of the investments which will be supported under the InvestEU program, they are, as the rest of the EU programs in the new budget, they are climate tracked. So all investments will be subject to climate tracking. We also have established specific targets for the climate relevant and environmental relevant financing. So overall, for the InvestEU program, the climate target is 30%. And under the sustainable infrastructure window in particular, majority, 60% of the investments will have to comply with the climate environmental objectives. We also have established under the InvestEU program the sustainability proofing scheme, which will assess and mitigate the impacts of investment operations on the three main sustainability dimensions: on climate, environment, and social sustainability. The InvestEU program also is complementing and supporting the just transition objectives. And it is under the InvestEU program, we will have the just transition scheme, which is one of the three programs which will also contribute to the just transition mechanism, together with the just transition fund and the public sector loan facility for just transition regions. Next slide, please. Now I would explain you more about the InvestEU Advisory Hub, the second pillar of the InvestEU program. Altogether, we have a budget for the next 7 years of approximately 400 million. This is the budget which comes from the InvestEU program, but then there are also complementary budget contributions which we are able to implement through the InvestEU program from other programs. And this is the case, for instance, with the LIFE program, which is one of our contributors to the InvestEU Advisory Hub. We also have some contributions from other EU budget programs, and through this centralized EU funded technical assistance and advisory hub, we are able to direct this technical assistance budget in a very targeted and specific way to the policy priorities which we are supporting under the InvestEU program. And again, the InvestEU Advisory Hub is organized like the rest of the InvestEU program under the 4 policy windows. We are targeting to support a large part of our advisory support will go to the sustainable investments. Then we, of course, also will support very much the priorities which fall under the research, innovation and digitization window, social investments and skills, and the cross-sectoral window, which is supporting priorities which are overarching, such as sustainability objectives and just transition and more. How we are doing it? Our largest partner for implementing the InvestEU Advisory Hub is, of course, the European Investment Bank, but we will also work with other advisory partners, which I already mentioned, including the EBRD and some national promotional banks. And in this sense, CINEA will also be one of our, with the Green Assist initiative, will be one of our potential virtual advisory partners who will provide mainly support to eligible beneficiaries under the sustainable infrastructure window, but in principle we can also, with the Green Assist initiative, also support can be given to other policy windows and projects which are originated in other sectors. Next slide, please. And here I would explain to you how the InvestEU Advisory Hub is functioning. In the past, our main implementing partner, the EIB, was the main partner which was collecting the advisory support requests and also providing the advisory support service through the various technical assistance and advisory programs which are provided by the EIB. Under the InvestEU, the Commission is taking over this role, and we are becoming, as the InvestEU Advisory Hub, the Commission is the main place for handling these advisory requests, and we are also hosting the central entry point through which the potential beneficiaries and project developers can request such support. So there are, in principle, two ways how such advisory requests can be received. They can be received either directly by submitting them to one of our advisory partners or through submitting them to this central entry point, and then the InvestEU Advisory Hub Secretariat, which is hosted in the DG ECFIN, will be able to allocate these advisory support requests to the different advisory initiatives which are being implemented under the InvestEU Advisory Hub. In future, it can also be the case for the Green Assist initiative. Next slide, please. As most of the EU programs, we also have our reporting framework, which is, of course, designed to make sure that the EU budget, which is being spent for specific objectives and to support the advisory requests, that we have full information about our beneficiaries, about the projects that have benefited from the advisory support. And as most of our implementing partners, also the Green Assist initiative will have to be part of our reporting framework, which is based and designed and there are key performance and monitoring indicators which will be the same for all our advisory partners. So the InvestEU advisory reporting requirements cover and all our partners will be required to report on the monthly update of requests and advisory assignments that they have received. This will be done through a centralized data exchange system, the management information system. I will come to it in a moment. And the objective of such reporting is to report on all the current and ongoing assignments which are being implemented. And we will, of course, collect the information on the name of the project, the location, the sector under which the project is being implemented, and the estimated budget. Then there are also two other indicators which are applicable to all advisory assignments, supporting specific EU objectives. Such assignments will also be tracked by their relevance to the climate and environment, just transition objectives. We will also, of course, monitor the beneficiary satisfaction with the provided advisory support. And when it comes to the Green Assist initiative, I would like in particular to highlight the first three project advisory indicators which are important and which are relevant for this specific assignment, namely that we would like to receive the information on the expected and mobilized investments, the total cost of such advisory assignments which have been processed and supported, also the type of the projects which have been supported and the stage at which such projects are applying for advisory support, for instance, whether it is an early stage project or it's already close to financing an investment stage. And of course, we are also asking our advisory partners then to do an ex post reporting on the investment and financing status of the completed advisory assignments 1 year after the advisory support has been completed. Next slide. And this is the InvestEU Advisory Hub reporting and the management information system, which I mentioned. This management information system is one of the central databases, or let's say the IT tools, which have been specifically developed for the InvestEU program, as the program is very large and it has several components, including the financing and the budgetary guarantee requests, the advisory requests, and then of course all the part which is related to the reporting. This large management information system will also help us and our advisory and implementing partners to gather all the information in the same place. And under this management information system, which will be accessible to all our advisory partners, this will be the place where they will provide an online reporting to us through an easy user-friendly manner through this management information system, which will help them to submit the structural reports, the technical assistance, annual technical reports for the advisory assignments, and it will also help the Commission later on to process this reporting data for our own reporting requirements to the European Parliament and the Council. So I would like to stop here. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christina, for this, and also Sabine for this most interesting presentations. Before moving into questions and answers, we still have another part that will be introduced by Philippe Tropman. Philippe is Deputy Head of Unit in my unit, so responsible for program support, coordination and communication. And he will give you a quick overview of Green Assist and also of the approach to the tendering of Green Assist. So Philippe, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Indeed, my name is Philippe Tropman. I would like to welcome you also on my behalf for joining us today for the Green Assist presentation, and it will be my pleasure to take you now more in detail through the tendering approach that we intend to apply here. But first, maybe in a nutshell, just one slide to make somehow the transition to the policy context that you heard right now, and the Green Assist initiative. So Green Assist is a completely new initiative, so you won't find any information on that so far. It comes, as we have heard, under the new InvestEU framework. And it complements it to some. So it's an add-on of a new initiative. The next slide, please. The advantage of having Green Assist under the InvestEU framework is that we can rely, of course, on all the tools that we have already under InvestEU. That is to say, as regards, for example, requests that you as stakeholders might introduce, well, they can rely on the existing tool, which is the InvestEU central entry point. I think it has been mentioned in Christine's presentation. But that's more for our side at CINEA. We can also introduce requests, but would then use directly the management information system. In both cases, there is a reporting of all transactions, all requests that take place. And for that, again, we can rely on an existing system, which is the management information system. So next slide. Yeah, thanks. So Green Assist in a nutshell again, and I think you heard now a lot about that. The main objective is, of course, to foster a pipeline of new investment projects, which have a high impact, green investment projects, I should say, which have a high impact. And of course, all that, the objective is to contribute to the Green Deal. You will see that the Green Assist initiative covers all sectors that you find under the InvestEU framework. You will find that in the regulation, in the InvestEU regulation in Annex 2, and you will see this is a very broad scope, so which is certainly a good point here to mention. Green Assist is not meant to be a further EU program, but rather to seek complementarity with the existing EU program. So it's an advisory service that can be combined afterwards with the use of existing EU funding programs. And it is designed in a way that we can reach the broadest population of stakeholders possible. Again, the scope is very wide if you look at the InvestEU scope of, or the sectors that are covered. Well, all these sectors qualify then also for the Green Assist services. Next slide, please. And now I will come more hands-on to the tendering approach that we have chosen, and I think which is for you the main interest here today. You are certainly aware that we structured this into two different lots. So the first lot is one that comes in the form of a single framework contract. So the objective here is to have one contractor selected who would then get specific requests as the need comes in. So this first lot is basically about the management of advisory services. That means that we have first a design phase where we will first set up a structure to have a roster of experts, or a pool of a structured pool, so to say, of experts. This roster would need to be managed, so experts would need to be paid and remunerated. All that is part of the design phase of this lot one. Then comes, of course, the core work itself. Whenever there is a request for an advisory service coming in, well, we would then need to check, or the contractor would need to check, to make the matching of the request with the expert that would be in the roster of experts. And of course, also to ensure that this is correctly supervised. So that's then providing the advisory service on a day-to-day basis. So that's more the implementation part of it. And then there is a third part, which is, of course, as we always have it in our framework contracts, we would need to monitor sort of all the requests that come in, how those are handled, and there must be, of course, also a reporting and a communication of all that, because, of course, we want to show publicly then afterwards also how this framework contract or this service, a Green Assist service, is actually being used in practice. So that's the first lot. As I said, that's a single framework contract, which has an overall budget of 22.5 million euros. Then there's a second lot, which comes in a different form. This is what we call a multiple framework contract with an reopening of competition. That means that here we will have a shortlisted, pre-selected list of contractors. And each time that we have a specific request or a bundle of specific requests that needs to be seen, then we would reopen a competition between this short list of contractors, and of course the most suitable one for specific request would then be selected on that basis. The content of the work of under this lot 2 is to provide advisory services in a wider scale, I would say. That encompasses activities such as providing capacity building services to requesters. It could also extend to help requesters to carry out market development studies in case there is a need for that. And as a third pillar, so to say, there is also the task of providing then directly hands-on advisory services on green investments, depending, of course, on the need that is formulated in the request. All that, of course, again, encompasses also correct monitoring and reporting of it. And it, of course, includes also the help to requesters to review their business models and to ensure proper communication on that. So this second lot has a budget of 7.5 million euros. And as I said, comes in this form as a multiple framework contract with reopening of competition. Next slide, please. So for you now who are envisaging to participate in that tender procedure, it's important to know that both lots that I just presented are completely independent from each other. So for you, it means you might either tender for lot 1, for lot 2, or for both lots. But be aware that there is no advantage or no disadvantage if you seek one of those forms of tendering. So it's not for you of an advantage if you would, for example, tender for both lots jointly. Anyhow, the evaluation procedure will be carried out completely independently from each other and will not look at whether tenderers would have participated on both lots or not. Also important to know, the duration of each lot, the contractual duration for each lot is always 48 months as from the date of signature of the contract. So next slide, please. Let's take now a very concrete example, and I will build upon what Christine already presented also already on the central entry platform. So here you see the abbreviation CEP. So let's assume that a request comes in. Next slide, please. And let's assume that this is a very general request that comes from a company or from any other representative body or even from an implementing partner. And let's also assume that this request does not yet specifically identify that this would be a case or a request under Green Assist. So that one comes in. Next slide. And we could equally think of a request, a more specific request already coming in, which already knows that this request would be related or should be addressed by Green Assist as a service provider. So we have basically these two different requests coming in, and of course we will have much more than 2 requests, at least hopefully. We even can say that we will not have the control of the numbers of requests coming in, which is natural for this kind of service that we provide. But just for you to know why we insist on that, I'll get back to that in a moment. So we will process then in the central entry point these requests coming in. And next slide, please. Well, and we have then to decide whether those requests, at least the general request, goes for another advisory service and would then be allocated to another advisory partner, or whether indeed this request would best be allocated to Green Assist under the framework contract, of course, that we will then have established by then. And we would then need to decide whether this is a case that should be allocated to lot 1, or whether it should be rather allocated to lot 2, so corresponding to the different topics that we would cover under that lot of the framework contract. So for the specific request, of course, the case is fairly easy. So that would, of course, directly be routed to Green Assist. And then again, we would take the decision whether this is allocated to lot 1 or lot 2. Next slide, please. Well, I think that's already the end. So that was just a short illustration on how this system would work. My colleagues will explain you in a while or provide you with more specifics on lot 1 and lot 2 afterwards. So this was just the outlining the general tendering approach that we have chosen. But I would suggest that we have already a short info session or a question and answer session here on the first 2 parts. So both the policy parts that were presented by Sabine and Christine, and also on the part that I just presented. If you have any questions right now, please use Slido, and we will then display them here and try to address them. It might well be the case, in the interest of time, that we will not be able to take all questions right now, but don't be concerned about that. We would then, those questions which we cannot take here will be answered later on in writing in any case. So there is a first question, and that would be for Sabine then to be answered. The question is, how does DG Environment expect to address potential overlaps and collaborations with InvestEU and other stakeholders, such as, for example, the EIB or the Green Assist contractors? Sabine, would you be able to take that question, please?
Yes, sure. And thank you very much for...
You are muted, I think.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you can? Okay. So thank you very much first for the question. We don't expect overlaps. I would say there is a number of tools that are available, and we want Green Assist to complement actually what EIB will deploy, not to overlap or to deploy more than what is foreseen. So these are the 2 objectives of Green Assist, to complement and to do more than what is already foreseen. I hope I have replied to the question, but do not hesitate to come back otherwise.
Okay, thank you, Sabine. I think, Mark, you wanted to comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Philippe. Also, I would like to add that there will be coordination between the different initiatives. So we from CINEA will also ensure that when, for instance, in the case that 2 separate questions would be introduced for the same kind of assistance, one to Green Assist, for instance, and one to the EIB Advisory Hub, we of course will coordinate within the framework of InvestEU to ensure that this request is allocated only to one advisory service provider. So, but this is not something that you as a contractor need to be concerned about. This is something that will be done at the level of the agencies and the Commission.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I think that's very clear. Let's go to the next question, please. And the question is, how would the differentiation be made between Green Assist and EIB advisory initiatives? I think here again, in the line of what Mark just explained, we will have at the central entry point, of course, that happens at the level of the Commission. It will be looked at on the basis of a set of criteria that we will, of course, set out in advance. We will then check what is the best fit for a request that does not specify already that it wants to come under Green Assist. We would then check what will be the best fit in terms of advisory services. So again, that's not something where you should be concerned about. This is something that will be managed internally then between the Commission and the agency. Okay, next question, but I'm looking a little bit in interest of time that we will not have too many questions still, but okay. The question here is, please specify which entities can apply for Green Assist support under Lot 1. I think this comes a little bit early, this question. I think it will be addressed anyhow in the presentations that will be done by my colleagues. I told you that Lot 1 and Lot 2 will be presented a little bit more in detail. And I'm sure this question will be answered by means of that presentation. And I think there is time for one more question. How many experts do you expect to have in the roster? Well, we would, of course, like to have a broad range of experts and expertise. It depends also, of course, on the different sectors and tasks that we have to cover. So we cannot engage now, of course, on a clear number. That would certainly not be helpful here. But it's more the question that we want to have a wide scope of experts of this roster, so that we can actually cover all the sectors and requests that are coming in. But again, we will not be able to provide you with a unique figure here now at this stage. Okay, I think we will stop the Q&As here. Again, we will have more opportunities later on, as we have foreseen several Q&A sessions. But in the interest of time, and as certain participants today will, of course, would like to link only for different parts of this presentation, we would like to try to stick as much as possible to our timeline. And that would mean that right now we go over to part 3, which is the presentation of Lot 1 in more detail. And I pass the floor to my colleague Krzysztof, who will take you through the tasks of Lot 1 and provide you with additional information. Thank you.
Good morning to everyone. So my name is Krzysztof Dzięcielak. Thank you, Filip, for the introduction. So I will guide you now through the tasks of the contractor within Lot 1. And then later my colleague Gauthier will further develop on the submission and evaluation. So let's have a look on the particular tasks. In general, all the tasks constitute one scenario in the Lot 1. And within the Green Assist, in the call of tenders, you have already noticed that we distinguish two tasks, the design tasks and the implementation tasks. So the two phases provide for a wide range of tasks. And in fact, they should overlap a little bit in order to allow for anticipating as much as possible the entry into operation of the Green Assist. So in the design phase, the contractor will, among other, design and establish the methodologies, procedures, tools, actions, documents, and so on, which are necessary to support the provisions of advisory services by the experts which will be in the roster of experts. So these tasks encompass experts, management, advisory assignment, monitoring and reporting, and outreach and communication. We will focus also on the remuneration grid, what is expected, what are the parts of it,
We will also look a little bit into the conflict of interest and eligibility of requests. Next slide, please. So within this, the main task, the first task, expert management consists of preparation of the roster manual of procedures, the various templates, which you will see also later in the process in Annex 9, so which is the expert contract fiche, the expert contract, and various tools, help desk, and the remuneration grid. What is important in the roster of manual is the description also of this all procedures which are needed for the implementation of the roster of experts, and this includes various screening and selection procedures, a monitoring of the profiles, the evaluation of performances, contracting payments, and so on. All procedures which may help to select the best experts matching the request. In this roster manual, you will also need to define some performance framework in the way of performance monitoring, and also indicators which would be used to monitor the performance of the experts. So the main idea of the roster is to build a diversified pool of experts, which will cover sectors relevant for Green Assist, and to demonstrate a good understanding also of the business model and financing obstacles and various tools. The expert contract template should be based on the relevant existing EU practice, which is available for various expert services. The expert fiche template, in fact, has three functions, main functions. So one is the encoding of the expert profile, which should include the information which will be necessary for the efficient matchmaking. It should also include information in order to easily identify any possible conflict of interest. And so like to indicate that the expert is not subject to an exclusion case. And also you should respect the data subject's rights, so the possibility of the expert also to have access to the information and to request any changes. For the expert management tool and help desk, this is an IT tool which might be developed by the contractor or acquired, and it should be user-friendly, of course, and flexible and upgradable, and allow the direct internet access to the contracting authority, and also especially to identify experts based on various keywords and criteria. And the remuneration grid is a confidential document, in fact, which should include the methodology, how to determine the remuneration of the experts of the roster. And the idea in this document is also like to arrive at the balance where we do not overpay, but we also provide competitive expert fees, and we keep a continuous interest also of the experts to participate in this advisory services. With the second task, advisory assignment, is about the procedures, how to combine the experts with the requests, and maybe this especially important is the clarification and eligibility of requests. So here the contractor should propose to the contracting authority process which will enable to analyze in a systematic and transparent way the eligibility of requests for advisory support. So this should verify the requests in terms of if there is a credible project or activity. Also, if there is a sufficient clear boundaries, and if it's necessary, if there are necessary conditions for the implementation of the project or activity, and also if it has the potential to directly contribute to the objectives of Green Assist. And so like the other actions within the task 2, also like this, the matchmaking, so this methodology, how to combine the request with the expert knowledge. And in the advisory management, we distinguish here 2 documents, which you will also see a bit later. This is the advisory assignment fiche and the charter beneficiary charter. So basically the beneficiary charter describes the conditions under which the advisory service will be carried out. So like all responsibilities, confidentiality, and so on. And the advisory assignment fiche is a document which goes among the beneficiary and the experts, and it documents the compliance and other aspects. Well, help desk for the beneficiaries is the same as like there is also help desk for the experts, which should help the users of the services. So next slide, please. We have 2 other design tasks: the monitoring and reporting, and also outreach and communication. In monitoring and reporting, we should design and put in place a monitoring and reporting framework with a supporting IT system. And this IT system should also encompass a workflow logging, operational financial reporting, including various templates and meet the requirements stipulated in the tender documentation. So as regards the operational reporting framework, this is important that there should be information reported on structured and not structured information that is listed in Annex 10 of the call for tenders. And you probably have seen that there is also various information meeting the InvestEU MIS, so MIS Management Information System, but also life requirements reporting, which, for example, focus on various characteristics, like climate characteristics, like biodiversity, the quality of air or quality of soil, and amounts of additional investments triggered by the initiative, for example. So this is important to take into account to respect all the requirements. Maybe a bit to speed up the presentation. The shareholders' feedback, of course, it's very important, and so like there should be like a possibility also to give feedback by the experts and the beneficiaries, and this will also contribute to the contractor performance framework, which in fact should be like a indicator, which is called like the assignment management performance indicator. That is the condition to award a performance premium for the contractor, which is also further explained in the section 146 of the call. And also my colleague Gauthier will elaborate a little bit more. So like on the performance criteria, which can be like the coverage, rotation of experts, the time to finalize the fiche, number of successful matches, etc. And the dashboard, I think it's also one of the important parts. So this should be like the real-time information available for the Green Assist, which should provide not only the overview of the data of the 6-monthly reporting period, but also the historical data since the launch of Green Assist. And so this should also include some information from the surveys, stakeholder surveys, like satisfaction, mapping of the existing expertise, number of experts in the rosters, etc. For outreach and communication, the last design task is an important task. So not only the preparation of the overall communication strategy, but also the scanning for potential events and enforcing publicity measures, which should help also to identify various opportunities for publicity, including social media and also like paid for promotion. to enhance the process of the requests. And let's go maybe to the next slide. So out of the design task, the second phase is the implementation task, which are clearly connected to the design task. So the implementation tasks for the contractor is the contracting management, which includes the 6 months monitoring and reporting based on the design task 3, monitoring and reporting. And here in the roster management, what is important is the population of the roster of experts and the community management. Maybe a little bit focus on the community management. This should be also an important task where the contractor should animate the community. So conduct some actions for the experts also to build for capacity building and engagement, providing feedback, providing some actions, engaging them in interactive actions like sessions, trainings, etc. Assignment of requests is the review of the eligibility and the income of requests for advisory, and then matchmaking. Assigned management of assigned services is mostly the financial and technical management of the advisory services. Payments to experts, this will be further developed by Gauthier on the remuneration expert fees. Monitoring and reporting, as I have already explained in the design task 3. This is the whole structure of the reporting and the information which has to be provided, starting with the inception report and continuing with interim reports and so on. And for outage and communication, as already mentioned also in the design tasks, this is an important task which should ensure the possibility of communication for the beneficiaries and promote the green assist also under the InvestEU advisory hub pursue other publicity opportunities. And yes, that's maybe next slide, please. And this, yeah, the next slide. And yes, so this is only to show that also in this, yeah, the previous slide. Yes, the previous slide that only shows that there will be also in these 2 tasks. It's important to have in mind that also the input from the contracting authority will be important. So we go to the last slide of my short introduction of the design and implementation tasks. This is an overall illustrative process. The details are included in Annex 9. This is here to show like the whole scenario, and basically also like the documents, various documents and templates which are in the process. So you see here the request for advisory services and the number 1, which enters the central entry point in the InvestEU. This goes then later to CINEA and the contractor, and the document created among them is the framing document. Then we have also the beneficiary charter and advisory assignment fish, which is the document contacting the beneficiary with the expert, and in also the expert contract between the contractor and the expert. So this is a nice illustration to see how all the procedures should be described and where are the documents are placed. So in the design, you have to have in mind also like to streamline the process and try to find efficiencies and adequation of the process, matchmaking to reduce any delays, and also to try to reduce administrative and management cost. So now I pass to my colleague Gauthier, who will elaborate on the scenario and the remuneration. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you, Christophe. I'm Gauthier Clar, I'm Senior Manager of Financial Engineering in CINEA, in the same unit as my colleague Marc, Philippe, and Christophe. And this morning, I would like, I have a dozen of slides to explain how we see the contractor's remuneration, the evaluation process, and a timeline. So I see that we have a next slide at 11. I'll try to catch up. So with this first slide on contractors' remuneration, I would like to highlight that the tenders indeed distinguishes 4 types of task. First, and remuneration. We foresee a flat rate for all design tasks. Then we foresee a flat rate for a period of 6 months for the implementation task 1, 2, 6, 7. Then we foresee a unit cost for the assignment management tasks that are 3 and 4. And last but not least, because of course we expect this last component to represent the bulk of the budget, we foresee a pass-through payment to the contractor to pay onwards the expert for his fee and expenses. So the reason why we structured the pricing structure this way is to give signal that variable costs should be remunerated on unit basis. Next slide, please. So here with this slide, we focus on the fixed part that is comprised of flat rate for design, for all design tasks 1, 2, 3, 4, and implementation task 1, 2, 6, 7. So obviously your tender for this part, for this task, will be based on a scenario that is described, the reference scenario that is described in tender specification, and that is fairly detailed. But in the remote case that the task would be changed, then of course these components may be adjusted based on the difference between the task that will be proposed in the request for service and the reference scenario. Also to be noted that the subtask 1 that refers to the onboarding of expert that is part of the implementation task will be adjusted based on a formula where we will compare the exact amount of expert to be onboarded over a period of 6 months with the scenario, with the expected number of experts that is outlined in the reference scenario, which is the INvestEU factor. Next slide, please. For the variable part that refers to the assignment management, and here we speak about the implement task 3 and 4, the remuneration will simply be this unit cost multiplied by the number of assignments that the contracting authority will purchase following a request for service, including those tasks. So the formula is fairly simple, but to be noted that the number of experts to be contracted per assignment, this component will be adjusted to reflect the number of experts that we see for each request of service. In the reference scenario, we foresee 1.2 experts per assignment, meaning that some assignment may go with only 1 expert, while some maybe would go with more experts. So this relation will be adjusted dynamically over time. Also, at the end, ex post, we will see which units have been only partly completed, and there is a mechanism in 5.3 describing which portion of the unit cost for those assignments will be paid. Next slide. This is the last component. This is actually a pass-through. So the contractor will obviously pay the expert. The contractor will pay the expert fee and the expert expenses. So this is a pass-through, and the remuneration will actually pay, the contracting authority will pay to the contractor this exact amount. So every 6 months, we will look at the information provided by the contractor, and we will pay this exact amount. So that will be done on a cumulative basis for all the expert contracted, and we will verify the number of days and that the remuneration paid to X expert actually matches with the agreed remuneration as per the remuneration grid agreed ex ante. To be noted that there will be no pre-financing, so a contractor may need to advance payment to experts, and these payments will be kind of reimbursed immediately upon, let's say, interim reports. And that will be verified by the contracting authority. So now I'm going with the next slide, please. I'm going to tell you how to fill in the Annex 6, which is a financial offer. So for the for all design task 1, 2, 3, 4, what we expect to see, it's a one-off payment that will be payable upon the final report for the design, and tenderers should fill the Annex 6.1. I'm not going to go through sales here, but what we ask to fill in is that the price categories per staff and also the work days. To be noted that for communication, it's slightly more detailed. I will come back on that to explain why later. Next slide, please. The same will apply for the implementation 1, 2, 6, 7, and 2 to 1 to 2. So again, here you need to fill the price category per staff, and then the person days that you expect to see. This will mostly be used for benchmarking later, so I'm not expanding on that. To be noted that for communication implementation task, we provide the estimate. That's the estimate for the work days. So you don't need to fill that in the table. This is because the scenario for implementation communication is a bit generic, and to recognize that it may be difficult for tenders to come out with an exact or precise workday assumption. So yes, next slide. For this, for the implementation tax 3.4, it will be unit cost. To be noted that unit costs include the performance premium. So it's not unit cost plus, but including the performance premium. And here you have only one figure to fill in, which is on cell D61. Of course, we expect the tenderers to price this unit cost, this one figure, based on, I wouldn't call it an assumption, but based on what our perception of how many assignments we see reaching the green assist, which is a figure of 146 units. It's not per se an assumption because it is not part of the reference scenario, because this will have no influence on the unit cost thereafter. So it's based on a very hypothetical, let's say, a distribution of probability, but we mentioned that to be so that that tenderers may assess first the level of variable remuneration versus fixed remuneration that they want to propose in the unit cost, and second, to assess let's say, the degree of exposure they want to take through the performance premium on the quality of their work. Next slide, please. And for the last payment, because it's a pass-through, then there is no input needed in Annex 6.1. So that concludes the part on remuneration. Now I will go to the evaluation of tenders. Here we have the conventional structure on the selection criteria with technical capacity and professional capacities. I'm not going to go over all the selection criteria, but just to highlight some of them. The important thing to keep in mind is that these selection criteria are actually designed to represent a mix of capacity that we will look for. First of all, we will look for obviously project and resource management in the field, but it has to be in the field of technical assistance. And as Christophe mentioned, it has to be a demonstration of IT, let's say, experience as well. Clearly, we look for experience in technical assistance. Why? Because the contractor will have to interface with beneficiaries, so he will have to be able to negotiate scoping, milestone, work days to finalize the assignment advisory fiche. But it's not only about only technical assistance, it's about technical assistance and management of technical assistance in the field of environmental sustainability, and also in the field of investment. So this technical capacity has to be, let's say, versatile, to be combined so that people in the team can work together. And that translates, of course, in the type of professional capacity we would like to see in the team. So, of course, project management in the sector that we want to see. So, sustainable development, natural capital, and circular economy. And here also we want this capacity to include expertise that we would like to find in the contractors with regard to project financing, contracting, and IT. This is not to say that all the team will be used at the same time, but we want to see a diversified and deep experience available at short notice and to be able to work together. Next slide, please. So this slide is about the award criteria. So we have a quality award criteria and a price. On the quality award criteria, we follow the same principle. We want to evaluate the potential of the contractors to ensure the success of green assist. So we want to check the affinity with green investment, the affinity with management technical assistance, and the affinity of with management of expert community. This is why, for example, we have the first two parts, understanding the context and understanding the service to be provided. And the last are more conventional. It's about allocation, organization, proposed methodologies, and quality measures. So to be noted that they are waiting, to be noted that they are waiting, and they are also threshold, and that evaluation will be based on information provided in the next 8.1 on a consolidated basis. On a consolidated basis. But what we want to see is obviously not volume, but more qualitative information in that. Next, please. So for the price, as mentioned earlier, you will fill in the Annex 6 the reference price. The reference price is the sum of the flat rate for design task, the flat rate for implementation per period, times 7 period, and the unit price per request times the number of requests, that is 146. So we'll calculate the score based on the cheapest price, and we come out with a single score as per the formula described. All this is fairly conventional. Next, please. Now I have a slide on this performance and quality requirement. There is indeed a requirement for a contractor performance framework, and this will be defined with a selected contractor by the contracting authority. it will basically reflect the expected result that we at contracting authority and associated DGs wants to see. That is obviously a high degree and diversified degree of expertise in the roster of experts. That is also evidence that expertise is contributed and does contributed to the pipeline of identified project. And also there is a expectation in terms of sub management. And what we want to see is obviously the higher, let's say, amount of budget going through the expert to maximize the efficiency of Green Assist. And of course, we want to see the cost under control. So the contractor will propose methodologies and process to measure performance criteria that we provide a list, an indicative list in the technical specification. Some are under the control of the contractor, for example, time to finalize assignment fiches. I'm not going through that again. And some are not. And in particular, the performance contractor will also propose the process and methodology for determining a indicator that we call the assignment management performance indicator, based on which let's say the performance premium that is included in the unit cost will be paid. This performance premium is basically based on a sufficient level of satisfaction from expert and beneficiaries alike. So now I have a slide to tell you. Next, please. Next slide. Thank you. Yes, I have a slide about how we foresee next step and the timeline. To be noted, this is an illustrative timeline. So you see color codes in the bottom where it shows the task on the contractor's side. It shows the task in green from CINEA as contracting agency, and the task from CINEA alongside the tender when it's capacity of CINEA. So for the latter that appear, the tasks that appear in red, there are mainly communication activities for the promotion of Green Assist and communication campaign for experts. This communication campaign will aim at attracting and collecting interest from experts, and that will fit in the initial step of subtask 2.1, that is the population of the roster. So you see here two campaigns that we will start in May, June, and then later after summer break. And of course, contractors should feel free to disseminate as well. The other critical information on this slide is that we intend to launch and sign the first request for service immediately following signature of the framework contract. Of course, there will be no revelation there because it's a single framework contract. So, and hence, we will plan to start the design task already in August, as well as some implementation task in parallel. And the idea is then to follow with requests for services to operational Green Assist at the time when requests will reach the central entry point, following the launch of Green Assist somehow end of September fall. So again, this is an illustrative slide, but the idea is that we are operational to start working mid-August. And this concludes my presentation. We have now a Slido session. So I guess, yes, thank you. So that's, I guess we have a couple of time to take questions at this stage.
Yeah, thank you, Gauthier, for this, for your presentation. So indeed, we have now been going through lot 1 in more detail. And indeed, the idea is to have now a question and answer session via Slido again. So we will go on as what we did already for the first 2 parts. And just to inform you, I think we will skip more or less the break and then go on with lot 2 at 11:30 as we announced it in the agenda. But that gives us the time now, first of all, to have certainly 15 minutes to address your questions, and we try to answer as good as we can now. Let me say a general word on that. So we see there are a lot of very specific requests coming in. We will keep all requests, as we said, but we suggest that we will answer those more specific ones then in writing. So you will get that. You will have a compilation of all questions plus the answers we will provide, and that we concentrate right now during this live session to the more general ones, so that everybody can then indeed benefit of the replies that we will give. So there is a first question that is the following: is it allowed to participate in green assist while tendering in other life-related and EIB tenders? Would that be considered as a conflict of interest? Well, no, we don't have any limitations here, so it's up to any requester to see how he would proceed on that. It will be then our task, of course, to see whether there might be any duplications of which we are aware. And I see that Mark also wants to intervene on that part. Mark?
Yes, indeed. I just would say that from the perspective of green assist, there is not, I would say there is no limitation, but it would then, of course, be up to the tender specification of future contracts, which are, for instance, established by DG Environment or by the EIB, to see whether there would be limitations with respect to contractors participating in green assist. But a priori, from the green assist perspective, we don't put such limitations.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Then next question. Well, is there any specific format for experts' CV to be presented in the proposals? Is the EU format acceptable? Well, this is typically something that will be set out during the design phase, as we called it, for lot 1. And there you will get then the instructions as also including as regards the format of the expert CV. We cannot say it at this point in time. Next question, please. Could you elaborate on the selection criteria of 1 million euro per project for large clients, which is mentioned in the criterion T1, indeed, for both lot 1 and lot 2? Well, on this one, it's pretty straightforward as it's set out in the tendering specifications. So you would need to prove that you actually have completed, that's very important, at least 2 projects in the field of advisory, providing technical assistance or consultancy, and which you successfully have carried out for a large client, and the budget of which exceeds in both cases for both projects 1 million euro. So that's very clear. And again, I pass the floor to Mark, who wants to.
Yes, thank you, Philippe. I also only wanted to specify that these criteria relate to the I would say the tenderer, which can also be a consortium of tenderers. So if you have a consortium of companies that tender, then the criteria apply to not to each and every member of the consortium, but to, I would say, the capacity of all the members of the consortium combined.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Indeed, that's a very important point to note on that one. So next question. The criteria mentions 2 projects of 1 million to be completed within the last 5 years. Could this period be extended or incomplete project be used as references? Well, answer is very clear, no. So the rules that are set out in the tender document are not modifiable and not cannot be negotiated. So it needs indeed to be completed within the last 5 years. And of course, it only applies to completed projects that are actually really finalized. Next question. Can stakeholders apply for the Green Assist separately from InvestEU? Is it only directed at those taking part in InvestEU or other EU funding as well? Well, first of all, from a formal perspective, the requests are, of course, introduced via the tools of the InvestEU framework. That's what we explained to you. This is the central entry point, so that's very clearly part of InvestEU. But of course, we don't know the outcome, of course, of the advisory service that will actually be provided. And it could well be the case, indeed, that at the end of the advisory services, we find out that it fits with the InvestEU, or it could probably, or it could fit also better than with another EU funding program. In that case, that's of course perfectly possible, but the initial idea is of course always to start looking, for us at least, whether the advisory services provided fit with a project that would come under InvestEU. But again, it's not an obligation that, or it's not an exclusive focus on InvestEU. Next slide, please. Could you please define what a joint tender is? Is it a consortium or a joint venture? Well, very clearly, it's not a joint venture. It's a consortium, as you rightly say here. So it's a grouping then of different partners who come together, but who don't need to create, of course, a new entity for that. So it's not a joint venture in that meaning. Okay, next question. Task 4 was touched upon. Could you explain what your expectations are in terms of communication activities, outreach, etc.? I think I will pass on that question then to Gauthier, or was it addressed by
yes, I can take that.
Gauthier, maybe if you could take that one, please.
Yes, I will try to address this one with respect to communication activities. Task 4 is actually a design task. So what we want to see here is, let's say, I guess mapping, most likely, to see where the publicity communication will be required. So it's we want to understand we want to discuss and finalize what are the let's say the communication activities that we foresee for Green Assist. In terms of what is possible in terms of publicity, and also we want to have a communication plan for these communication activities, and then based on that, during the implementation, we'll select the communication activity that we are going to implement at that stage. So it's basically preparing the communication strategy, and then let's say preparing the materials also, and then identifying where we can communicate about Green Assist.
Okay, thank you, Gauthier, very clear. Next question is, with reference to the contract value, shall we need to consider the entire contract value or only our share? Gauthier, could you take that one as well, please?
Well, I guess the requester of this question refers to some kind of consortium, or maybe with respect to the selection criteria. Maybe I understand the question. So no, I mean we don't, let's say, distinguish between the shares of the various contractors if there is a consortium of contractors. So that's the entire contract value completed by the consortium.
Thank you, Gauthier, very clear. Next question. Will the contractor have the flexibility to renegotiate the management resources should the number of requests be significantly higher to manage? Well, that's a good question because it deserves a more general answer on that, and also on the concept on how the remuneration is being done. Well, the question is no, there is of course no room for renegotiation, but you will have seen from the presentations that there is a fixed part of remuneration and a variable part of remuneration, and even a third part, which is the pass through of costs that you might be generated by the intervention of the experts. So the fact that the number of requests is not cannot be determined in advance, and which indeed is an open variable, open parameter in the whole story. Well, this is exactly to be covered by the fact that there is a variable part, so the unit cost, that is being multiplied by the number of requests that actually come in. And that is meant to address especially that case. So it's not a matter of renegotiating then the whole contract. And Mark, yeah, you want to extend?
Yes, just to be crystal clear about it. It means that the management resources needed to implement the request, I would say the variable part of the management resources needed to implement the request need to be integrated in the unit cost. And I would say the fixed part, which is independent from the number of requests, this is then a lump sum. This is how we have approached the design of this call for tender.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Next question then, please. Could you indicate a percentage of the total amount under Lot 1 dedicated to management versus the pass-through payments? Are other EU programs a good benchmark? Well, here, clearly, no, we cannot indicate a percentage here. It's not, well, the number of, as we said, the number of assignments and experts to be paid is something that cannot be determined in advance. So that's, again, part of the variable part. And this is why you have been provided with a scenario case where I think a number of 146 assignment is being assumed. And that allows you then to determine the variable costs. And independently from that, you should then establish the costs that you would require to carry out the other tasks, which are subject to a fixed remuneration. And we are not in a position right now to provide you a percentage. That will be part of your tender, of your offer. But having in mind that this variable aspect is well addressed by the fact that we have the unitary cost approach in that one. And Mark again wants to complement.
Yes, thank you, Philippe. Now, just to say to this question that, of course, it is our objective to use, I would say, this overall budget that is allocated to Green Assist as much as possible for providing the actual services on the ground. The management part of that, I would say it's a necessary burden, which we of course have to assume. And it is also on that part where there is the competition in the tendering process. So we would of course like to see tenders that maximize the pass-through payments, but on the other hand, we also want to ensure good quality management services. So there's a bit of the balancing act, and the winning tenderers will be the one that provides, I would say, the best approach, the best balance in this consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for complementing that. And maybe also useful to recall that the budget indicated of 22.5 million is an upper ceiling. Yeah, it's not the idea that it's being in any case being used. So in case we would have very few requests and very few experts to remunerate, the idea would not be that all the remaining rest globally as a lump sum goes then to management. That's exactly why in advance in your tender you will have to engage on the management part from your side. And as Mark correctly says, this is part of the competition process, and that's where you can differentiate from other competitors. And then there was the question whether EU programs are a good benchmark. Well, that's difficult to answer because that depends, of course, very much on the nature of such a program. So if you have a similar EU program, a program of similar nature that provides advisory services and that would have a similar setup, then yes, this could be a benchmark. But if it's a traditional EU grant program, I think you will not be able to use that as a benchmark for this specific case here. Next question, please. In lot 1, criterion P1, what do you understand by equivalent project management certification? Can you provide a list of approved certifications? Well, this one I would need to pass on to Gauthier. Could you take this question, please?
This is a fairly, thank you, Philip. This is a fairly precise question. Can you provide the list of approved certification? I cannot provide a list right now. I suggest that the requester put this question on e-tendering, and we'll see then if we can provide a list of approved certifications.
Okay, indeed. Thank you, Gauthier. And as I said at the beginning, so these very specific questions, we will rather reply to them than in writing and to have that. But anyhow, you will get the answer on that one. Then, are requests addressed on a first come, first served basis until the budget runs out, or are there other priority indicators? Well, this question I pass on to you again. Gauthier, could you take that one, please? Because you are quite familiar with the way of the central entry point management.
Yes, thank you, Philip. Well, this question is actually also a question for our DG, our policy DG's side as well, because at the level of when the request reaches us, then of course we will check with priority indicators, and that will be part of the assignment process or the allocation process, we call it, to Green Assist. Once the request is passed to Green Assist, then as you can see in design task, there will be methodologies and which will be implemented for checking the eligibility of the request. So we will, Green Assist will kind of digest the request on a first come, first served basis. But then, having said that, there will be also an eligibility check. So just to check that this request obviously matches eligibility criteria or priority indicators. So yes, it comes on a first come, first served basis. But then only the request that meets priority indicators or eligibility criteria will be actually handled and assigned an expert.
Thank you very much, Gauthier. That's very clear again. Next question, please. And I think we have now to look at the time also, because we are supposed to start now with the next part of our presentation. Could you please elaborate on the IT management competence requirements? Again, Gauthier, I would need to ask you, or should we leave that one for the written answers then?
I can briefly broach on this one. IT management is very important, and as you can see, and as the audience can understand, it's about managing community of experts. It's about managing reports and feeding into the MIS. So there is an important component of IT. It's mostly, I guess, business intelligence and let's say management of databases. We're not talking here about rocket science, let's say processes or modeling here. So it's mostly business intelligence and database management and producing reports for reporting. This is a short answer, but yes, we can expand if the question reaches us through the e-tendering.
Thank you, Gauthier, and Marc will complement.
Yes, just very short complement to the short answer. Take a look at, my advice is that you take a look at the requirements in the specification on what we expect in terms of IT development. And this will then determine, I would say, also the competence that will be required to implement these IT systems. There are very specific references to IT developments in the technical specification. So this will give you a very clear idea on what is expected in terms of competence.
Thank you, Marc, also for that one. And I think we will stop our question and answer part here, because in the interest of time, we should start now our last part of today's session, which is more detailed information on Lot 2. And I pass the floor to Gauthier, who will provide you with these details. And afterwards, again, we will have a short period of time during which we can then take your questions and provide our answers. Thank you. The floor is yours, Gauthier.
So thank you, Philippe, again. Yes, we have now a session on this is part 4 on Lot 2. So I will proceed immediately with this first slide. And basically to tell you that Lot 2 is about provision of advisory services. So here, in contrast with what we've just discussed, there is no design phase, there is no or less management. It's about the direct provision of hard, let's say, advisory services, meaning that under this tender and the subsequent request for service, we will expect to obtain, or the beneficiary will seek to obtain hard, let's say, deliverables. There will be obviously no roster and no management of community under this one, or in a much broader or specific format. So we have distinguished in this Lot 2 3 types of advisory services: capacity building, market development studies, and again, green investment advisory support. Capacity building is briefly the capacity, let's say, what we expect to be delivered is advisory services for building resource, skills, reach of the beneficiaries, these kind of things. Market development studies, we all understand what it means, studies, and green investment advisory support is again to help the beneficiary for existing investment or providing, let's say, additional support for, and the strategy of and the approach from the beneficiary. So these are the type of services that are expected under this tender. And to help the tenderers to, let's say, provide a basis, we have provided 3 scenarios for each of them. The important thing I'm not going to go through this scenario, but the important thing with respect to this scenario is that they are fairly generic, and we just give details about the task, the timing, and the work days. the important thing to understand is that these scenarios were also made up to include as many components that we expect, that we foresee to see when they come to us through GNSS. So basically, these scenarios include tasks that reflect this expectation. This is why you will see, for example, just to highlight some of them, a strong focus on the analysis of audience, a strong focus on the analysis of business model, access to financing, dissemination. The concept behind that is that yes, it's about advisory services, but it's about advisory services where we need to see a direct impact of the capacity building, a direct impact of the studies on the project, on the pipeline. So there is this very concrete dimension in this lot 2, and the request that we hope to obtain through the Green Assist central entry point, they will be screened on that basis as well, to make sure that only these advisory services with a direct impact will reach and be handled with this lot 2. Next slide, please. So I go directly on the evaluation of tenders. And again, we have conventional approach, technical capacity, and professional capacity. Next slide. Yes, on technical capacity, again, I'm not going to go through all this technical capacity, but just to mention that with regard to project management, they have to be in the field of advisory. And then we have also, contrary to lot 1, we have added technical capacity selection criteria on each of the 3 different types of advisory services that we expect to see. So for capacity building, for environmental study, and for environmental or environment focus investment. So the capacity building, as you've seen in the tender specification, is for any sectors, but for the studies, it has to be environmental studies. And again, for investment advisory, it's a focus on economic or financial aspects in the environmental domain. Next, please. With regard to professional capacity, again, I'm not describing this, but we look for the same focus, e.g., sustainable development, sustainable finance. So contrary to, let's say, lot 1, we want also to see training, coaching, mentoring, but there is obviously no need for contracting and no or less IT or business intelligence aspect. But we want to, obviously, the team to have also things that we expect to deliver in the advisory services, i.e. economists, review of business model, and financial access, and access to finance, to finance, these kind of things. So this explains the type of professional capacity we want to see within the tenders. Next slide, please. So here again, at the for the evaluation process, the tenders will be assessed based on quality of work criteria and the price, same weighting as for lot 1. Next, please. Okay. With respect to the quality of work criteria, then compared to lot 1, they were resized and repackaged, I would say, to accommodate for the specific criteria of each scenario. So you have basically a general part, general award criteria. There are 2 parts: the understanding of the overall context, because we want to ensure buy-in and adaptability. We want to know if the tenders have a specialized approach or a more generalist approach. And of course, on the part 2, we want to see also we want to understand about the proposal in terms of role organization from the tenderers, and also about the management plan and quality control measures. And then we'll also assess the replies from the tenderers for each of the scenario. And here we ask again to understand, we ask the tenderers to demonstrate that their understanding of the objective of the service to be provided for each scenario, the quality of the proposed methodology for this scenario, and the organization of work foreseen for this scenario. So it will be for all scenarios, but it shouldn't be a repetition. So we see specificities in the advisory services expected, so the information provided should reflect that as well. Same comment here. These scenarios, these let's say award criteria or sub-award criteria are weighted, and there are minimal threshold to be met for all of them. And again, that will be assessed as per the template, the information provided as per template 8.2, and which will be looked on a consolidated basis. I will not expand on the lens because I see that there are questions later. Regarding price, again 40%. It's based on proposed workday. Let's say it's based on only the price list for categories, not on the proposed workdays. So you will find in Annex 6, Tab 2, that only provides for price category of staff, and this is because again the scenario are generic, and because we may want to use this indication also for benchmarking when we issue the request for service for the advisory service when a request reaches us. Next slide, please. That brings me to the to what happens at the level at the time of request for service, also about remuneration. There will be 5 maximum tenders evaluated. At that time of the request for service, there will be no assessment of exclusion or selection criteria, and there is a shorter evaluation period of 30 days. So similar weighting at that time, quality and price 60 and 40, and also with same threshold for minimal score. So, however, the selection will be based on different evaluation criteria, and they are focused more there because at that time of the request for service, of course, we will know about the specificities of the advisory services expected. So then we will focus clearly about the methodologies that the 5 maximum tenders foresee to address this specific request for service. Then, of course, at that stage, the remuneration will be based, the remuneration of the contractor that will be selected will be based on the selected offer. And in this selected offer, we expect to see a more details regarding the work days. And so it will be based on the contractor on estimate of the work days and based on the specificities of the request for service. And then being a study or capacity building, it will be the performance thereafter will be based on performance, deliverable final reports, just like for a normal study. But all this obviously will be described in the request for service. That brings me to the same slide regarding the timeline. Again, this slide is illustrative, same color code. So here, the important thing to point is that the evaluation of offers might start after lot 1. So basically it will start, or it may start after the evaluation for lot 1. Indeed, we plan to see the first request of service later in the year. but obviously not too late. And this is particularly true for service and capacity building and close to market, where we will have in a second a presentation as an example, because there will be a need for interfacing and coordination in between the new contractor and existing contractor. Other than this, as you can see on the right bottom corner, the request for service will be issued on demand basis for advisory service. We will try to group when relevant. So that concludes my short presentation on lot 2. And maybe we can now turn to, oh yes, I want to introduce our colleagues, Milena Shumanova. Milena is going to give us an example of let's say, services that we may expect in the context of lot 2. Over to you, Milena.
Hello, thank you, Gauthier. Hello, everybody. Still good morning. As a follow-up to Gauthier's introduction of lot 2, I will just give you a snapshot overview of a possible example for capacity building type of activities, which in this case is the close to market support to live funded projects. So just to, for the update reasons, here are a few facts about LIFE program, which is the only EU program dedicated exclusively to environment, climate action and nature conservation support. And here you see the indicative budget for the current programming period. And I would like to highlight specifically the sub-programs of circular economy and quality of life and climate mitigation and adaptation related projects. Within LIFE program, we have an initiative called Close to Market, which is a close to market support to specific type of project. Next slide, please. So these are LIFE projects, which is a, let's say, proportion of LIFE projects which have which have market potential. And this initiative is already ongoing. Therefore, it's already being procured and implemented by CINEA, by another framework contractor. So just to clarify that the key priority for all LIFE projects is the sustainability. So all the projects which are financed need to be sustainable after the LIFE funding. And at the same time, there has to be a potential for uptake by society, but also obviously also by economy in particular. I don't think I need to go into details on this. I mean, obviously, if projects are economically successful, this will sustain and confirm their long-term environmental impacts. So this is what this initiative for this close to market support is trying to achieve via supporting beneficiaries with their market uptake, with the commercialization activities or upscaling activities. Next slide, please. So here, just to give you an idea about the examples of areas where live close to market beneficiaries are looking currently for support. It is not an exhaustive overview, but it gives a relatively good taste of the needs that we have been recording in the past few years. So here is a business plan development and review support, sale price determination, but also product design, market analysis, and also very important is the additional post-life financing. On the intellectual property rights, we, within the Close to Market initiative, we are not providing direct assistance, only facilitating connection with, for instance, the EU IP help desk. Next slide, please. Here, in terms of the expectations from the live C2M services currently, but also in the future, the overall objective, obviously, is supporting the live projects towards the market readiness. And among these selected activities, I would like to highlight the mapping of the new and ongoing projects, also group coaching, but also in-depth individual coaching activities, different type of C2M sessions that are more like a 360-degree overview sessions and follow-up calls to ongoing and closed projects. Also, the cooperation with the platform of EU Innovation Radar. And very important, the coordination with other external contractors. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, and with some examples of beneficiaries' needs for C2M support. These include, these are illustrative examples, so you can see that this is a type of market support to projects that can vary between connecting with potential investors, providing related coaching, connecting with potential business partners or end users, and product design support. Next slide also continues with some examples. As I mentioned, also the additional next stage financing support and the IP rights support. So this, I hope, hopefully this short presentation on the illustrative example was helpful, and we'll be glad to answer any questions if needed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Melina. That was very clear. And again, that was meant to round up our intervention. So by providing you with a very concrete example of the close to market services, and you might wonder whether this now duplicates, of course, what shall come under Green Assist. Well, the answer is that I got it right. These close to market services will phase out towards the end of the year, and which means that this example shows you typically the kind of task that you will then need to take up afterwards once this will be a part of the Green Assist initiative. Yeah. But again, it was just meant to be a very hands-on example, and I think it was very useful. Thanks a lot, Melina, for that. Okay, that brings us to the end of our session, or almost to the end, because we promised you to have still a question and answer session now. I suggest, in the interest of time, to limit that now to 5 or 6 minutes, so we will be able to take some of the questions that came in. So, first question that comes in: which kind of evidence must be provided in support of the contracts of the experts? Gauthier, I pass that on to you.
I'm muted. Yes, thank you, Philip. Well, the evidence is we want to see details about the contract. Which kind of evidence must be provided in support of the contact of the expert, or it should be contract of the... I'm not too sure I understand the question. I think that the question refers to the evidence we want to see in terms of technical capacities, as we ask for, let's say, demonstration of a certain level of experience. But the question is, to me, unclear. So maybe the requester may want to clarify that. I do not understand really what the question means. Support of the contact of the expert.
Thank you, Gauthier. Indeed, we read it as contract, but yeah, if there is a need for further clarification, please introduce it and we will try to take it up again. Next question, please. Also for you, Gauthier, I think T5 criteria refers to experience environment focused investment advisory. Regarding remit of investment advisory and beneficiaries, please elaborate and provide examples. Is that sufficiently clear for you, Gauthier?
It's for sure that it's in the environment, let's say, focus advisory. So that's has to be related, I guess, to a specific investment. So maybe this one I can, or we could expand on e-tendering as well, because it's important to be clear about this.
Let's keep it. As I said, all questions they will not get lost, so we will provide answers to the best extent we can in writing then afterwards. So I think there's time for another question still. That's, I think, also too specific. Let's go to another one. Next question, please. As we said, we would like to rather like to take the more general questions so that everybody can get the maximum benefit out of our answers right now. So indeed, which kind of evidence must be provided in support of the references? Gauthier, could you take that one as well?
Evidence, I mean, we're not too prescriptive on that. We ask for sufficient level of details in terms of identity of contract, start and dates, the total amount, and these kind of things. And there is again a fallback where we, in the process, as per the procurement from the Commission, we can ask for more evidence. So that, but at the level of the tender, we ask only for basic detail, so that we can be, let's say, reassured that the contract or the underlying contract exists. So, of course, there is no limitation in terms of what evidence you can provide. Of course, we want to see in the technical, let's say, capacity, information that are let's say, demonstrate the credibility of this information. So, with details about what was the assignment for, who was it for which amount, and the dates, and what were the deliverable produced, so that we can assess, let's say, and verify that you are the expertise in this selection criteria.
Thank you, Gauthier. And I think we have two more questions, which I will very quickly address. Could you further elaborate what you expect to see in this section? Ability, adaptability to provide the 3 types of advisory service. I think that's a more specific one. I had another one here in mind. Could you go to the next question, please? Concerning the selection criteria, if we provide a reference not involving another member of the consortium, shall we consider only our share? I think we had that already. It's not about the shares, but I think we will stop here because we have a very last slide to present to you, and we would like, of course, to respect the time frame we have set. So the very last slide here, and that's a little bit the takeaway for you now from this session, which was a very long one, but I think was important for you if you're interested in that one. So again, to wrap up what we expect, I think it became clear throughout the presentations that we made to you this morning that we need, of course, information, quality information from you. Please have a look at Annexes 8.1 and 8.2, where indeed we need information as precise as possible. We also said that please ensure that you are competitive whenever you bid. It's not a matter of now using the whole budget if the circumstances don't allow it. So we mentioned the example of having very few assignments. In this case, the idea is not to use the remaining budget then as the available budget, but of course, please ensure that you come up with a very competitive price offer on, notably, of course, the fixed part. Yeah. The variable part nobody can predict. And of course, in more general terms, we expect accountability and evidence of commitment from your side, from all of you, whenever you decide to bid. That brings me to the very last information we would like to convey to you. So please bear in mind, the submission date is the 13th of May, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Brussels time. So that's really the cutoff. You have, as we said, a question and answer function on the e-tendering portal where the tender is published. You have until 1 week before, until 5th of May, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, to put your questions, and we will provide then the answers also via e-tendering portal, and so that they are all visible for everybody there in a public manner. And we will try to to upload all the questions and the answers we provided so far on the questions that we dealt with throughout this morning, to upload these also to the Q&A section on the e-tendering portal, so that you can all go through them again. And of course, those ones we could not address this morning will then also be addressed in writing. And we also provide you with the link here of this Green Assist webpage here again, if you want to have a look at that. And I think there was also a question whether this presentation will be uploaded to the e-tendering portal. We will, our intention is to do that as well, so that you can pass it in review again for the sections where you might still have questions. And again, please refrain from contacting us directly, even though you got our names now here. But please, any request must be sent to us via the formal channel on the e-tendering portal. That brings me to the end of today's session. We are late by 3 minutes. Apologies for that, but I hope you found it useful to follow this presentation here. And again, we are really looking forward to get a wealth of good tenders here in the interest of having then the Green Assist initiative going live as soon as possible. Thank you for your interest, and take good care of yourselves. Goodbye.